Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Stuart Margolis, and I'm calling the annual town meeting to order. It's Monday, May 16, 2022, and 7:30 p.m. Notice of the annual town meeting was published in the May 6, 2022 edition of the Woodbridge Town News, was mailed to each household where an eligible voter resides, and was posted by the town clerk on the town signpost. I will now entertain a motion to waive the reading of the legal notice. Is there?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is carries. First order of business is to elect a town meeting moderator. I call on Jeanette Blitzman for a nomination.
I'd like to nominate Stuart Margolis as town moderator for a term of 2 years. He has been town moderator from 2016 to 2018 and is a practicing attorney.
Call on First Selectman Heller to second the nomination.
I will second the nomination.
Are there any other nominations from the floor? Hearing none, I declare Stuart Margolis is elected as town meeting moderator for a term of 2 years. The second item of business is to consider the budget for fiscal 2023. According to section 6-2H of the Charter of the Town of Woodbridge, each and every recommended budget item shall be considered, and that the budget as recommended by the Board of Finance shall be deemed to have been appropriated unless the sum is increased, decreased, or eliminated by a vote of the town meeting with no less than 250 eligible voters present and voting, and 60% thereof required to carry any motion to increase, decrease, or eliminate any item. No recommended budget item may be increased to an amount greater than the original request for appropriation. Now my job is to determine whether there are 250 people present, voters present, and I determine there are not. And it's my understanding that there are not 200 people lined up outside to get in. So therefore, having determined that there are less than 250 people, voters present, since we do not have 250 present, no action on the budget to increase, decrease, or eliminate any item is allowed, and therefore the budget submitted by the Board of Finance will be adopted as presented to the annual town meeting, and no votes will be taken on the budget. However, we will have a brief presentation, and then we encourage your comments on any item in the budget, and would ask that you come to the microphone, state your name and address, and address your comments to the appropriate town official. I'd now like to introduce First Selectman Beth Heller, who will say a few words.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the May 16th, 2022 annual meeting of the Town of Woodbridge. Before I begin, I must extend deepest thanks to Amity Regional High School District 5 for hosting us this evening. Under normal circumstances, we would hold a meeting of this size in the Center Building gym. However, there is very little ventilation in that room, and meeting here is a much safer option as the pandemic daily positive numbers are unfortunately rising once again. Let's also give a big thank you to the registrars of voters, checkers, and the town clerk officials who are keeping track of how many eligible voters are here this evening. Tonight we will take the second of 2 steps in the process of approving our town budget for the new fiscal year beginning July 1st. Last month we invited all residents to ask questions and take comments at the preliminary budget hearing, and now we present the Board of Finance's final proposed budget. The annual budget reflects our shared values and remains a balancing act of our commitments to provide excellent education for our children, as well as showing our respect to taxpayers by carefully budgeting and responsible spending on essential town services. Special thanks go out to our Board of Finance and our Finance Director, Tony Genovese, and the Finance Department for developing this final budget. Countless hours have been spent to get to what is presented here tonight. This is a collaborative effort that takes place over months with input from boards and commissions, department heads, staff, and the public. I thank everyone who worked so very hard on this. As you know, in Woodbridge, our schools remain a very high priority. We have and always will place a paramount value on public education of our town's children, both at the Beecher Road School for grades pre-K through grade 6 and in the Amity Regional District schools for grade 7 through grade 12. Our budget continues to fund the resources that are necessary to ensure the outstanding quality of our school programs and support the teachers and staff members at our schools. The town and Beecher and Amity administration continue to collaborate and find ways of cost sharing. We are always looking carefully for additional ways to save taxpayer dollars while maintaining top quality, locally controlled educational services for all Woodbridge children. I'm proud that despite many differing ideas and viewpoints, we always work together amicably. I thank the boards of education for working so hard to achieve what is best for our students and our taxpayers. This past year, I've been laser focused on funding quality of life improvements with grants. Working closely with our state legislative partners, I've secured more than $3 million in grant funding, $2 million to renovate the old firehouse, $425,000 for senior center renovations, and $600,000 for sidewalks and pedestrian improvements in the town center. The old firehouse building was damaged in a fire in 2006. The new $2 million in state funds will complete this project and convert the building into a community center for all residents to use. The old firehouse is a beautiful building and to me is the gateway to the town center campus and also an important part of my town center beautification plan. Construction will hopefully begin this summer on the Woodbridge Senior Center renovations so that our Woodbridge seniors will have a modern, fresh, welcoming, and air-conditioned space. When finished, we will have a space worthy of the wonderful and exciting programming that happens inside. This winter, we earned a nearly $600,000 Department of Transportation grant to install sidewalks connecting Amity Regional High School to the town center and to upgrade the asphalt sidewalk that goes around the library lawn. Combined, these three projects, funded with over $3 million in state grant funds, go a long way toward completion of our town center campus beautification plan, which envisions making our town center campus a more warm, welcoming, and pedestrian-friendly space. Remaining projects in the beautification plan include additional outdoor seating, updated signage, and improvements to the police department and the rest of the center building. We continue working toward a stronger financial future. This year's budget process has been extremely challenging. Town expenses continue to grow, but our flat, stagnant grand list puts upward pressure on the mill rate. Our 2030 task force, made up of citizens interested in seeking ways to create a healthier, robust grand list by 2030, will soon start working with a consultant on placemaking for our business district. This summer, they will invite stakeholders from the commercial district, such as residents and business owners, to a meeting to hear their thoughts and ideas. I believe their work will make our business district more attractive to businesses and to customers. I have also created a bipartisan subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen. Selectmen Sheila McCrevin and David Vogel are serving on this most important committee, charged with creating a strategic plan to help direct the board's priorities for the future. Financial stability is a major pillar of that plan. Tonight, Selectmen McCrevin and Vogel will share a draft of the plan with you after my remarks. Woodbridge has received $2.6 million through the Federal American Rescue Plan Act, also known as ARPA funds. This is a once-in-a-generation funding opportunity, and I strongly believe it should be used for once-in-a-generation transformational projects. After the Board of Selectmen receives the final copy of the strategic plan, the board will review the plan and see if there are any projects in it that could or should be accomplished with the ARPA funds. The board will come up with a list of suggested projects and then ask you, the public, for feedback. Following that feedback, the board will decide on funding priorities for Woodbridge. My ideas are to use these funds to make improvements to the business district, add ventilation to the center building so we can safely return to having meetings and events in the gym. I would also like to add a pavilion at the library lawn so that outdoor events have a covered space. We should also contemplate upgrading our aging playgrounds and/or make investments to the aging irrigation systems at our ball fields. I will proudly note that Tony and the Board of Finance's work on behalf of Woodbridge has once again resulted in accolades, both the Budget Award and the Audit Award from the Government Finance Officers Association. We also want to draw your attention to the town's new interactive online budget. This tool should help residents better understand our finances and budget. Please visit the town's website to see and use the tool. We will now hear from Sheila McCrevin and David Vogel about the draft strategic plan, and following that, Tony will give us some highlights of the proposed FY23 budget. Thank you.
Good evening. As First Selectman Beth Heller just mentioned, Selectman David Vogel and I have been working with Tony and Betsy at Town Hall to create a draft of a strategic plan for the Board of Selectmen. So David and I will give you a brief overview, just a couple of slides here tonight. We'd like to note that this outlines what we agree are the most important and pressing issues facing the town in the coming fiscal year. So the board has outlined these issues with some potential solutions, and importantly, we've identified partners that we want to continue to work with as we seek to make Woodbridge a desirable place to live, work, and play. The board has ultimate responsibility for meeting these goals, and we will direct and receive progress update reports from the town departments, boards, commissions, and the public as we continue to refine these initiatives. So again, the board's goal in writing and enacting this plan is to respond to the town's current situation and plan for a stronger future that will benefit all residents. So I'd invite David to come up and speak to the next couple.
Thank you. Our first priority is ensuring financial stability. We thought that it was important to put that first in this document because it is our top priority. The context is that we have had several years with virtually no growth in our grand list, and that has seen at the same time increasing expenditures and inflation that is putting upward pressure on the town's mill rate. Our focus is to find ways to diversify and grow the grand list, to support local businesses, and to attract new businesses to Woodbridge. The board will explore opportunities for shared services and the potential for elimination of redundancies to ensure the town is as efficient, effective, and fiscally responsible as possible. The board will also work to educate taxpayers about the town's finances so that residents may better understand the budget's problems, potential solutions, and the process. Sheila.
Our next priority is investing in and maintaining our town-owned buildings, lands, and recreational resources so that they continue to be welcoming, attractive, efficient, and provide a healthy environment for everyone. Specifically, the board will focus on the future of the former Country Club of Woodbridge property, upgrades and renovations to the buildings and grounds at the town center campus. This will include building projects at the old firehouse and the senior center, as Beth has mentioned, and the beginning of discussions about renovations at the center building. And then, of course, we have Town Hall, which is also over 100 years old. We will also include environmentally responsible and energy efficient systems to the fullest extent possible.
Lastly, board will focus on enhancing quality of life for people who live and work in Woodbridge by providing services and resources that allow and encourage people to thrive. Specifically, we're looking at potential areas of overlap at human services, the library, and recreation, and how to make those departments as efficient and effective as possible. We're also looking at ways to help residents enjoy the outside, enjoy the outside safely by expanding and promoting biking and walking options and improving our parks and playgrounds. Woodbridge must continue to be a welcoming place for all residents. We plan to reinforce this with community events, forums for people to come together, and opportunities to embrace our diversity. Thank you.
And I'll just note that we do indeed want input from the public, so if you have any reactions to this, either tonight or in the future, you can write to the Board of Selectmen. We are keen to hear from everyone. Thank you.
Thank you both. And now I'd like to introduce our Finance Director, Town Administrative Officer, Tony Genovese, to give a brief overview of next year's budget.
Thank you very much. So on the screen before you is the preliminary budget that was presented at the hearing in April. Just as review, the preliminary budget was expenditures of $53,824,129. We had in our budget non-tax revenues of $3,826,642. That includes grant funds, department charges, interest income, and other sources of non-tax revenue. And so what you have left, if you subtract that from the total expenditures, is $49,997,487 to be raised in taxes. That had a mill rate of 43.49. Since that time, the Board of Finance met to recommend a final budget for the town meeting, and there were two expenditure changes which I want to bring to your attention. They're also included in the flyer that was mailed to each household. The first is a reduction of $80,000 in town employee fringe benefits to reflect savings in health care. The second was an increase of the Woodbridge Board of Education budget, which was due to increased health care costs. Those two adjustments sort of cancel each other out, so there was no actual change to the total expenditure amount. There were a number of capital budget changes that took place. None of these changes impact the mill rate, but there were changes to the capital budget, so I want to bring them to your attention. First was the Board of Finance added $275,000 to the Human Services capital budget for fiscal year 23 to be used for HVAC improvements, with the funding source being the American Rescue Plan. The Board of Finance added $35,000 in each of fiscal years 24, 25, and 26 to possibly purchase air packs for the fire department. And finally, the Board of Finance added $80,000 in years 24, 25, 26, and 27, totaling $320,000 to possibly purchase radios for the fire department. You've probably heard a little bit about this on the news, but the state of Connecticut has adopted or passed on a mill rate cap of 32.46 mils on auto taxes in all municipalities. So those municipalities with a mill rate higher than 32.46 will have lost revenue because, as you recall earlier, the mill rate was 43.49 in this budget. So over a 10 mil reduction in our autos, the mill rate for our autos causes lost revenue of $1.3 million, a little less than $1.3 million. In order to make up for that loss, the state is granting the town a little over $1 million to help bridge that gap. So as you can see, we have a funding funding gap of a little less than $300,000 in the current revenue budget. In order to cover that gap, the town would have to add an additional 0.28 mils to real estate and personal property to make up for that funding shortfall. When the state calculated its funding for the grant revenue, it was created on 2022 information, so that is why there's a funding gap. And lastly, just as a note, the preliminary budget recommends $17,197,401 for the town's portion of the Amity Regional School District budget. The latest updated request is $17,129,903 for Woodbridge, resulting in a change or decrease of $67,498. And I believe the new date for a referendum is the 24th of May. But those are the highlights that have taken place since the budget hearing.
If there are any questions or comments regarding the budget, please step to the podium and identify your name and address, please.
Amy Morella, 184 Rimmon Road. I have several questions about the presentation, so if there are other people who want to go before me, I don't want to hog the mic. Okay, so the first question, well, the first is a comment. I just wanted the Board of Selectmen and Finance to be aware that I received today my notice of this meeting. So the mail is late, and I just hope you will keep that in mind as you go forward with town mailings. I've noticed that with my personal mail going to people. What the charter requires and what the post office delivers may be two different things. The next is just to understand on Tony's presentation on the Amity Board of Ed. It's my understanding that the budget final numbers will be adjusted to reflect the latest Amity request. Is that the case, or are we stuck with having to pass a budget that has an extra $67,000 in it?
We passed the budget with the extra $67,000. That's the budget.
Okay.
We will not, the actual that we actually send to them, will wait until their budget is approved.
Okay.
And if it's not, then we send last year's budget, last year's amount until they have an approved figure.
Okay, so then I have a question. You said that the Board of Finance designated, I think it was $275,000 for senior center improvements from the ARPA funds, but I thought I heard Beth say that the ARPA fund determinations would be made after the strategic plan was adopted.
So there's the majority of the ARPA funds will be designated once the strategic plan was adopted, but there was an immediate need for the senior center project.
Okay, okay. So it's a majority of the senior, the ARPA funds. Okay, then I end up with one final overarching comment, not about the budget, but about the strategic plan that was mentioned and Beth's discussion of her priorities. I appreciate the fact that you are making an effort at a strategic plan. I would note that for at least 21 years, since I was a first selectman, it has been the goal of the town to diversify and grow its grand list. The big question is, how? And I think you need to have a much more robust discussion with the community that you represent as to how to do it, rather than say, this is our strategic plan, and then 6 members of the Board of Finance Board of Selectmen make that decision. The same thing could be said for, I think it's more than 12 years, 13 years, for determining the Country Club of Woodbridge use. Having that as a strategic plan goal is fine, but the big question is how. That of course depends on what you want to do with it. I am here primarily tonight to suggest that with respect to that document and also with respect to the housing plan, you need to have more opportunity and invitation for public discussion. You need to actually have meetings where you actually invite people. I would say with a strategic plan, you should actually send it to each of your commissions and ask them what they think, and the hows and the wherefores. You should have a SWOT analysis opportunity by town members to come in, because if you build it up, you might do a better job of figuring out how you would actually achieve those goals by doing the extra work. And with respect to the housing plan in particular, I was discouraged, Beth, by your comment in the most recent communication, I think it must have been by email, that you were going to try to get the housing, get any public comments within a couple of weeks. My understanding is that the housing plan committee had delays because they were waiting for COG. They in turn had to give you all delay because they had to work on the COG document, which had errors and may still have errors. And what you're now doing, as I understand it, is focusing on still getting it on time. As far as I know, there are no penalties from the state of any substantial nature for failing to get it in on time, and I don't think you should shortcut the public in the public comments, and I think you ought to have an actual hearing opportunity where people can learn what that document says, why it says what it does, have a dialogue, as well as giving an opportunity afterwards for public comment. It's, as I understand it, the housing plan is linked to our town plan, and the town plan went through a very robust public process by law, and I think you ought to give a robust public process to the housing plan. Same way with the strategic plan. So to sum up, we've all been living without public comment of any robust nature because of COVID for 2 years, but it's time to turn back the dialogue to the public and encourage that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, my name's Diana Bono, 52 North Peace Road. I'm grateful I can comment. And my comment is, I've unfortunately heard nothing new tonight. 30 years of budgets, and I know hard work goes into it. I know we get money from other governments to help fund projects, and that's wonderful, and it takes hard work. But year after year after year, we hear the same thing, and it's that we don't want services cut, that it's a marginally small increase year after year. And it has put us finally at over 40 mills. I think the only one in the state our size. And now we're at 43 point something, where I remember the big thing was 40. It doesn't end. And why doesn't it? I think about this all the time. What are we doing wrong? And I've heard all about the small commercial, heard about the excellence of schools. They've been forever. I really believe it's that in this town, we have carried for probably since Amy, I really don't know, but it's a tax and spend culture. We just feel we could keep doing this and the taxpayers will go along. And indeed they do. It hurts some people leave, but I think it's really time we start thinking about the impact of this tax and spend, and that it should be the one and only priority, to cut the taxes, to get it lower, to make this town more affordable. We want diversity. Well, that's one way. We want different businesses. We've priced out everything. And so it's just my comment. I appreciate your public service, but the culture among the leaders in this town needs to change. If we are going to have a town that actually is able to welcome everyone, that it is actually able to allow parents here to have their kids afford it. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Good evening. Daniel Del Creek, 11 Maple Vale Drive. I do have a question. Is there another agenda item for non-budget related subjects, or this is the time to air that out? Just to be clear, because I was confused with agenda item number 3.
This is it.
Okay, so the 2 questions I have, one is the 2030 task force. Will there be information sent out on how to join that or participate in that, or did I already miss the correspondence that went out?
It was started over a year ago.
Okay.
So we're always looking, so we'll keep you in mind.
Okay, and
Thank
then
you.
number 2, just to piggyback off Amy said, I've attended meetings previously and I've commented about the town charter revision. I do believe the last time our charter was revised was 1967. Quick math, a really long time ago. So I would like to put to the board again in a public forum to request a charter revision committee be created. If I have to make the motion tonight, I don't.
It's, I believe tonight there's only budget items around the agenda, and I don't think you can do that. You can come to the Board of Selectmen and do so.
Okay, I'd like to take this opportunity then to mention to the Board of Selectmen in the year 2022, direct mailings, other forms of communication, Zoom, hosting of meetings, and everything else associated with it. If we're going to revamp the town and the buildings and the accommodations that are here, I think we should also look in forms of communication, mode of operation, and the way that we execute the business that we do. Thank you for everyone. I know a lot of time and energy goes into everything, but if we could just go back to the charter and really take a look at it, I think that could potentially have an impact on our brand list, because the way this town operates, businesses absolutely take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Yeah, Bob McSherry, 12 Old Country Road. We've heard a lot about the 2030 task force for the grand list. Grand list's been pretty flat in town since I moved in 2012, and not much has been done about it. As a business owner, I have to look at expenses. As my revenue drops, my expenses have to drop. And I'm not knocking the Board of Finance. I wouldn't want your job. However, I would like to look at somebody like New England Brewery, why they would leave this town. What forced them to go? Was it zoning? Was it lack of support from different bodies? That I don't know. But I don't drink craft beer, so, but to lose something like that from the town is sad. It's a commercial base that brings people here. Then they go to a restaurant in town or look around and do other things. But gotta do something to grow this grand list. It's been a problem here for a long time and it's been overlooked. It's to the point now where on my road it's 8 years, I'm the longest resident. 4 houses have flipped over 4 times. That doesn't bode well for community going forward. I grew up in Bethany. And when you go to a town meeting in Bethany, there's a lot more people than here. And I'm not knocking everybody here, please, so don't think that way. But what makes Bethany pretty special is all the old timers are still there because you can afford to stay there. That's not going to happen here. I can tell you when it's time for me to retire, I'm out. Because my property taxes have gone up $4,000 since I've been in my house a year. That's crazy. It's nuts. So something's got to be done with the grand list because this is not sustainable. And going forward, if the town wants to keep this up, get a good look at the older folks that are in this room. I'm 56, I'm not far off. They're not going to be able to afford to stay here. And that's what made this town great. That's all I got.
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Alan Davidson, 15 Edge Hill Drive, Woodbridge. I'm 85 years old, I'm still here, and I moved in 51 years ago, and I love the town. If you do a little bit of math, we are in inflation, and if you do the mill rate and inflation and whatnot, we're doing a wonderful job. It's a shame there is inflation. It's a shame that all sorts of things go up, health care, bus costs, gasoline, everything. And you cannot run a town without raising the mill rate, without cutting dramatic stuff. As an 85-year-old, I love this town. The services are minimal. They can't get any more minimal. They really can't. Thank you.
If there's nobody else with any questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.